Hello and welcome back to Officina Virtuale. Let's continue our manual clamp, and today we can start with our assembly design. Clicking on existing part, we can add our first part and we can add our clamp base, and let's click on open. This is our first element. We can fix this element. This could be our reference, so we can select this element and we can click on fix component. As you can see here, we've got our first constraint and we've got our first element, clamp base. Okay, now we can add a second element. We can click on existing component and we can click on product, and we can add a second clamp base, and let's click on open. As you can see here, we've got two different elements, and we can move with manipulation. We can select an axis, for example this, and we can move our second element and we can click on OK. We can add two different constraints. For example, we can add coincidence between this, and we can add coincidence between, for example, this and this. Now let's add our second element. We can click on product and we can add a clamp hinge. Let's click on open, and we can click on coincidence between this axis here and this element here, and let's update. Now we can move our element, and we can move our element with respect to constraint, and we can select this axis as reference, and we can move these two different elements here, and let's click on OK. Now we can add two different elements. We can click on product and we can add clamp elbow links and clamp elbow right, and let's click on open. Let's move this element. For example, we can manipulate this element here. This is the right position, and we can add a first condition constraint. For example, we can add coincidence between this element and this element. No, we've got coincidence between this element, so we need to manipulate. We can move using this element as reference, and this is the right position. So we can add a condition, for example, constraint between this and this, and let's update. Okay, and let's add our second condition. Now we can manipulate this, and we can add our second condition. We can add contact constraint between this surface here and this surface here, and let's update. Now we can rotate our element, we can manipulate, we can select rotation, and we can select this axis here as reference, and we can move this element. This is the right position. Okay, now let's click coincidence between this and this, and let's update, and we can add our second condition, contact between this surface here and this surface here, and let's update. We can move this element. For example, we can rotate, selecting this element as reference, and this is the right position. Let's click on OK, and we can add a coincident constraint between this element here, this, or this, and this, and let's update. Okay, now let's add another element. Let's click on existing component, and we can select clamp base baser and open. Okay, this is our element. So we can add our coincidence constraint between this and this element here, and let's update. Okay, and let's move this element. Okay, and as you can see here, we've got, this is our fixed part, and we can add our condition, contact constraint between this element here and this, and let's update. This is the right position. Okay, now let's add our clamp root. Let's click on open. This is our element. We want coincidence. Let's rotate this element. For example, we can select this element as reference and we can rotate. This is the right position, and we can rotate this element. For example, we can select this axis and we can rotate this element. And now we can add our condition. We want coincidence between this, and let's update. And we can move our element. For example, we can select this element as reference and move, and let's click on OK. Now let's add our clamp lever, and let's click on open. We want coincidence between this element here and this, and let's click on update. Now let's fix this position. For example, we can move this element using this axis as reference, and let's click on OK. And now selecting our clamp root, we can open our tree and we can select this different plane, and we can click on hide and show, and we can add an offset constraint selecting this plane here and this, and let's add our condition, let's say 45, and let's click on OK, and let's update. Okay, this is the right position. Let's select this different plane and we can hide this element, and we can close our clamp root. Okay, let's rotate this element. Let's rotate this element. Let's select this as reference and we can rotate this element. So for example, in this position, and let's click on OK. Now let's add our clamp base support. Let's click on product and clamp base support. Here we are, open. This is our element, and we want coincidence between this axis and this element, and let's update. Now we want coincidence contact between this and this, and let's update. Okay, and let's click on contact constraint. We can select this element and this element, and let's update. Okay, there is a little problem, as you can see here. We've got problem with our dimension. We can correct this element at the end of our tutorial. Okay, now let's add our clamp T, and let's click on open. This is our clamp T, and we want coincidence within this hole and this, and let's update. Okay, we want contact between this and this surface here, and let's update. Okay, now we need to fix this position. And let's select coincidence between this. As always, I will use the element with the anchor, so we can select this element and this axis here, this, and let's update. Okay. Perfect. Now we can select. I don't think this is correct. We need to select coincidence between this element and this element, and let's update. Okay. Okay. Now we can rotate using this element as reference. Yes, and we can rotate this. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Let's click on OK. Now let's add our clamp foot and let's click on Open. This is our foot, and we can select coincidence between this element and this element. And let's update, and let's select contact between this surface here and this surface here, and let's update. We can rotate this element, manipulation, and we can select this element as reference, and this could be our correct position. This, and let's click on OK. We can add our second foot. Let's select coincidence between this and this, and let's update. Let's select contact between this and this, and let's update. Now we can rotate this element, selecting this axis as reference, and this could be our right position. Okay. I don't remember if we've got our foot pin, yeah. We've got our element, and we can select coincidence between this and this, and let's update. Okay, this is the right position, and we can add another pin. Let's click on Open, and let's select coincidence between this and this, and let's update. Okay. Now let's select this surface here, and let's add our latest constraint, contact constraint between this, and let's update. Okay, perfect. Very well, this is the right position. Let's check our assembly design. For example, we can add another constraint. For example, we can select this surface here, and we can add as a constraint an angle constraint, for example, between this and this, and we can say what we've got here. We can say 180. Yes, and let's click on OK, and let's update. Okay, we want this to different surface here, this surface here, and this surface here parallel. Now we can check our element. For example, we can manipulate, we can move along this direction, and as you can see here, we've got this condition, this parallel condition between these two different elements. Perfect. Okay. Very well. Now let's select, for example, this element, and let's select this. As you can see here, we can rotate our assembly design in this way. Okay, perfect. And let's click on OK. Now let's hide our constraint. And this is our clamp, manual clamp. If you like this content, please consider to subscribe, share, support, and so on. See you soon.